All right, welcome back to Play of the Day. Today we're going to be doing our fourth and final of the Shakespeare's, Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar is both a Shakespearean tragedy and a Shakespearean history play. Um, William Shakespeare knew that the masses were primarily uneducated, and he wanted to preserve the history and show them the history of both England by writing about all the kings that had come before and some major world figures as well. And the story of Julius Caesar definitely fits into that. You will see it's not really a historical document as much. There's a lot of theater magic that's happening in it at the same time. But it's a more interesting one than most to me because, quite frankly, the plays about kings bore the life out of me. So I like to teach this one instead. So, in ancient Rome, 44 BC, you've got Julius Caesar, and he is the Caesar of Rome, and he is really popular because he's really good at fighting wars. In fact, he just came back from Pompeii, where he took over Pompeii, and people are getting really worried because he's the Caesar and he shouldn't be like president forever. But people are really worried that he's going to try to become the emperor and then he would be forever. And they find that that actually makes him that he's starting to be corrupted by that. Um, he's starting to do things like go off and fight battles and win a new territory. And instead of keeping it to strengthen Rome, he gives it to Cleopatra in Egypt because she's hot. And they're like, we can't be doing this. So there's this whole group that are called the conspirators. And they're a group of senators that don't trust him and they don't want for him to become emperor because there are other people that do support him becoming emperor. Um, Mark Antony is one of those people that is a senator that wants for him to become emperor. In fact, in front of a crowd of people, Mark Antony offered him the crown of Rome 3 times. And each time he denied it. But each time he denied it, he was more reluctant to deny it. And he clearly kind of wanted it. And Mark Antony made this offer in front of a crowd of people, thinking they would cheer him on and he would take it because he could see the people wanted for him to do it. But to everyone's surprise, the people of Rome, even though they loved Julius Caesar, actually cheered every time that he rejected it. And that's making Caesar really mad. But to win back their love and to get the people to remember why he should be emperor, because quite frankly, he wants to be emperor, he holds this big parade and it's celebrating his defeat of Pompeii. And at the end of this parade, when everyone's starting to discard, this crazy old soothsayer, which is a psychic, walks up to him and says, beware the Ides of March, which translates to beware of March 15th. Doesn't say anything else. But there's Caesar, and he's hanging out with his wife, Calpurnia, who hears it. And she's like, that doesn't sound good. That guy seems to know otherworldly things. And Caesar's like, that guy's crazy. Just forget him. He's not important. He has like one line in the first act. Pay no attention to the soothsayer. So, Cassius and Casca and Titinius are three of the conspirators. They're worried about him being emperor, but they're also just really jealous that he is so loved and they're not so loved. So they're creating this conspiracy to kill Caesar so that he doesn't get this power and so that they can get power. but they know none of them are particularly loved. However, there is one senator by the name of Marcus Brutus that is very loved, and he's friends with Caesar. And they're like, if we can get Brutus to be part of this, it legitimizes what we're doing and it lets people know that, in fact, there are bigger concerns here. So they, Cassius sneaks up and meets with Brutus. And it's a really great scene. He's trying to convince Brutus that Caesar's becoming too powerful and that it's their duty as Roman senators to stop this rise of Caesar. That if he loves Rome, he has to be part of killing Caesar. And Brutus is like, why would I do that? He's my friend. And they're like, yes, but Rome is your country. And Cassius has this really great speech where he's saying that like Caesar walks among the people like a colossus, which is like this huge giant stone statue, and the senators are just running around his feet trying not to get stepped on. And he's like, why is he the one that became so powerful? You're powerful. And he says, perhaps, Brutus, our fault lies not in the stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings. And what that means is fate has nothing to do with this. You got to grab fate by the collar, shake it up a little, and make what should happen happen, which is everyone should realize we're as important as Caesar. He's not an emperor. He is just a part of this government, and we've got to get rid of him because he's too dangerous. Brutus doesn't know. He's very uncomfortable with this. He goes home. He talks to his wife, Portia. Portia's like, what's the matter? And he's like, nothing, nothing. She's like, something's the matter. What's going on? Brutus receives copies of some letters of people that were supporting the idea that Caesar should be emperor, that were being written in saying, Caesar, you should be emperor. And he's starting to see this whole movement happening of the country supporting Caesar becoming way too powerful. And so then he finally says, all right, Cassius, I'm going to help you. We're going to do this. So the next morning, which happens to randomly be March the 15th, Caesar gets up. He's getting ready to go into work and go to the Senate. And his wife, Calpurnia, is like, don't go. Just don't go. And he's like, you're being crazy. You can't believe every babbling idiot out on the streets. This guy was just wacko, and there's no reason to believe him. And she says, look, I had a dream last night. I had a dream that you were in the center of town and you walked into the fountain. And as soon as you stepped into the fountain, it quit running water and it just started running blood. And you were covered in blood. Please, for one day, stay home. And he says, nope, I'm not going to do it. I'm not scared of some pretend psychic guy. So he goes off to work. And the conspirators, being Cassius, Casca, and Titinius, along with Brutus and a few other senators that they have won over, approach him and they're like, Caesar, we have this petition that we need for you to sign. And he's like, no, I'm not signing that petition. And that was exactly what they were expecting because they all draw their knives and they all stab Caesar. So you get to mark him out a lot because he's real dead. So the last person to stab him, of course, is Brutus, because that makes for a good dramatic telling. And Julius Caesar turns and says, "Et tu, Brute," meaning you as well, Brutus, because he thought that he could trust Brutus. He knew he couldn't trust the others. But Brutus gives the last stab that kills him. They know that they now have to deal with the public on this. So Brutus says, "Let me address it." He goes out in front of all the people, and all the people have congregated and they're yelling and they're angry. And he convinces them that they were facing a soon to be emperor. They're like, he's already been offered the crown 3 times. Notice, he was more reluctant each time. And as soon as you were happy he didn't take it, he threw a parade. He's out of control. He's giving our land away to some hottie in Egypt. Like, we can't trust him. And we did this because I loved him. He was my friend, but I love Rome more. You deserve rulers who care about you, not about their own personal gains. And the people are really won over by this. And they're cheering and they're like, Brutus, Brutus, Brutus. And he's like, all right. Um, so Mark Antony has asked kindly if um, he could speak the funeral of Julius Caesar because they were friends and we should honor him even though we killed him. And everyone's like booing, and Mark Antony comes out and they're like, boo. And he goes, friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. And they all get quiet, not because that's what crowds usually do, but because that's in the stage direction. And Mark Antony gives a speech where he's saying, I've always loved Caesar. We've been very dear friends. He was a great ruler. I've always admired Brutus. He is a great senator who cares very much about the country. And I hear that Caesar was getting too powerful, and he must have been because Brutus is an honorable man. And he does this speech. And as he goes through the speech, he keeps saying, because Brutus is an honorable man. But each time it becomes like more damning and more like, oh, he's actually bashing Brutus at this moment. And he goes into small details of like, yes, we offered him the crown 3 times. He would have made a great emperor. He is the greatest ruler we've ever had. And yes, he grew reluctant because it's hard to turn that down, but we're forgetting he did turn it down. He did not break the law. However, Brutus committed murder. Cassius, Casca, Titinius, they all committed murder. And now they're going to be in charge? And are we going to let them because Brutus is an honorable man? And the crowd is like, oh. And he says, I think we shouldn't let Brutus take over at all. I think we need to throw Brutus out of the city. And they throw Brutus out of the city. Meanwhile, we find out that Cassius actually forged all the letters that made Brutus think he should kill Julius Caesar, and Julius Caesar actually shouldn't have been killed. But now they're outside of the town and they're running for their lives, and Brutus gets really upset. He's like, you made me a murderer. And Cassius like, yeah, okay, I get that, but it had to be done, and you were just dragging your feet too much. And the soothsayer already said it was going to be on March 15th. If it was March 16th, it wouldn't have had any kind of dramatic flair. So we need to do this. We need to do this, and you just need some convincing. You still did the right thing. He's like, so are we going to go back and take the city? And they're like, yeah, we're going to go back and take the city. How could we not? We're the conspirators. We overthrew Caesar. However, Brutus then receives word that his wife, Portia, is so distraught over him leaving that she has committed suicide. Yeah. So Brutus now is like so torn up and so tortured that he's like, I have to do this. I have to go back and like earn back some semblance of a life. Meanwhile, they know that Mark Antony in the city is going to have more power. So they're like having to plot and everything. Meanwhile, Cassius hears word that Titinius, who is not only a co-conspirator, but also his best friend, has been captured. And that is really awful because he realizes he's probably going to be captured next. And when he's captured, obviously he's going to be tortured. He's going to be thrown in prison. He may even be killed. And he is so scared that he has another soldier stab him through, and Cassius is dead. Meanwhile, Titinius walks up because the information was wrong. And he's so distraught that his friend is dead that he decides he probably should be too. And you get a double suicide. So now things are not looking good for Brutus because now Brutus is like one of the only conspirators left. But he's going to go into this battle, and he does. And in the first battle, he actually wins. And he's like really good at fighting this. And so he's like, okay, but we know that this is not a decisive win, and I'm going to have to fight again tomorrow. I'm going to go and make plans. And he goes to make plans, and someone steps in, and he's like, I don't want to be disturbed. And they're like, well, you don't have a choice. And he turns around, and it's the ghost of Julius Caesar. And Julius Caesar's ghost is like, you're not going to win this. You're going to have done all of this, murdered me, led battles against your own country because you were tricked. And you can't make this right. Like, you're going to fall over nothing. And that really breaks Brutus's spirit. So the next day, when they go into battle, Brutus can't fight as well because he's realized that everything he's going through for nothing. And he realizes he's about to lose. And so instead of losing in the battle, he then kills himself so that he can take power over his own destiny. Everyone's real sad. Mark Antony, who's a real good politician, delivers words in front of the Romans and says he wants to honor Brutus because Brutus is the greatest Roman of them all. And all the people are like, what? Weren't you speaking out that Caesar was the greatest? Mark Antony, what are you doing? But this actually, Mark Antony had teamed up with Octavius, the son of Julius Caesar, and this starts to hint that maybe things aren't going so well with Octavius, and maybe we should have a play called Antony and Cleopatra, deal with that whole thing. But he's like, no, I realize Cassius, Cascus, and Titinius are awful people who were jealous and greedy, and they want to overthrow Caesar out of jealous and greed. But Brutus was tricked. He was willing to sacrifice his friendships and sacrifice everything to protect his country from what he thought was an impending evil. And if we could all be Romans like that, then Rome would be a better place. And so Brutus dies, but he's actually memorialized. There is one part of the play that I left out because it's a tiny part, but it's just my favorite little part of this play. There's this poet named Cinna, and there is this conspirator named Cinna, and they're not the same people. But when Mark Antony gets done with his speech and is like, chase the conspirators out, they actually find the poet and they're like, oh, there's Cinna. We got to throw out Cinna. He's a conspirator. And he's like, I'm not a conspirator. I'm a poet. I'm just a poet. No need to hurt me. And they're like, yeah, but Cinna, your poems suck. And they kill the poet just because they can. And that's a pretty amazing moment. You realize that you're getting into like a crowd mentality that is not going to work out well for anyone. But I just love that part. But it's not really integral to the plot. So that gives us the story of Julius Caesar and Brutus, and that's our Shakespearean history play. I hope that you enjoyed it.